Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. Today is day 9 of the 30 Day Speaking to Camera Challenge, where I attempt to speak to the camera every day for 30 days in order to improve my confidence on camera and general confidence in social interactions. So, today's task was to avoid the dreaded the word that seems to permeate through all conversation. It is one I've noticed more and more, not just in myself, but in others as we go through these interactions on a daily basis, not just on camera, but with voice notes, with conversations over the phone, and I think it's a almost habitual a filler word that we've just come to take as commonplace. So today's task is obviously avoiding that. The topic of conversation is going to go way away from that, and we'll kind of see where we go. I'll try to catch myself each time there is an but there may be a few that do slip through. I've already seen a few R's kind of coming through, but we'll see what we can do on that one. So today we're going to be covering something I alluded to in the previous video, or one of the previous videos, and that is my love for board games. This is something that is a more recent addition. I still enjoy the occasional video game, but I used to play a lot as a child, and I think it was largely because I was alone. And I think as kids, especially as young boys, I think we do tend to gravitate towards gaming. I'm not sure why. That is a question. I think it probably has something to do with that gratification or that sense of purpose, that sense of achieving something. And I think those regular milestones that you get with gaming in terms of leveling up, and those are something everyone actually looks forward to. They are exciting. They do give you that little rush of dopamine. So enough of that. The board games basically came in, you can see a couple of my favorites this side, probably about a year and a half ago. I think it was the same time my close friend passed. She was an avid board gamer. Her and her husband used to play quite regularly. That's Dungeons and Dragons, all of those, which I haven't got into the Dungeons and Dragons part just yet, but that may be coming. We'll wait and see. But I think it's the social side of it, where you kind of are engaging in something, or engaging in an activity that's either collaborative or competitive, but it's that social interaction that's not necessarily forced, that I love. I think I always have loved that. The competitive side of it's obviously fantastic, just in terms of trying to understand where another player is at and then engage and make your decisions based on that, which I suppose is just general strategy. I think in economics we kind of looked at game theory, all of those, which definitely plays into it. So, board games are not what they once were in the past. I feel like we had the classics like Monopoly, Cluedo. What else was there? I remember some Mad magazine game. And honestly, most of them were largely forgettable. I think Monopoly is one that does still exist and still has a fair presence. But somehow they weren't as engaging when it's not your turn. Modern board games, by comparison, seem to have shifted away from that entirely. Even when it's not your turn, there's still something that's happening, something to do, something to pay attention to, something to keep you occupied, which obviously makes it that much more engaging when you're playing these for 1-2 hours. You are dedicating your time as one that should have that element of enjoyment. Yet, if I think back to most of my games of Monopoly as a child, I feel like most of them ended in disaster. It was one where there was one player always, whether it was me or someone else, that pulled ahead, and everyone else felt a little bit left behind. Catch up was quite often impossible. And you definitely knew you were losing, which made the experience that much less engaging. Modern board games, by contrast, don't seem to suffer from that problem. It's one where the margin between victory and loss is very small. It's one where quite often that's only calculated at the end. So you're quite often completely unaware you're losing or winning until that last moment. It's one where quite often you get the downtrodden or the people who see themselves as losing collaborating against the victor, or that the one who is in the lead, just in order to balance the playing field. And this all makes it that much more exciting. If I look at playing a video game as a comparison, if I'm always winning, I very quickly lose interest. There's no challenge. If, by contrast, I'm always at the cusp of my skill level, where I can beat it, but at the same time, it requires skill, effort, and engagement, then I'm likely to stick around. I think modern board games do this very well, just by their structure, by their rules. If you're looking at some of the card games, like Unstable Unicorns. This is very true. I'm not going to get into the rules of this. I might do that in another one. Otherwise, this is going to get very, 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 very long. So we're going to avoid that one like the plague. But if you look at this, if you look at your Cards Against Humanity or Cards Against Muggles or whatever variant you're deciding to play, you definitely get this. If you're looking at modern Catan, if you're looking at most of these, which most of you probably have never seen before, we get the same thing. Some of them introduce entirely new concepts like creating your own dice and Dice Forge, which is very novel, effectively creating your own luck and investing in what you think is going to be important in the future. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. It's kind of, and each game again is so different based on subtle changes, which just makes the whole experience that much more special. And I think it comes down again to that competitive edge, I suppose. That lack of clarity as to when you're truly winning. And I think for me, a prime example of that is a Japanese board game called, well, a game based in Japan called Tokaido, which I'll go into at some point, potentially. We'll see if there's any interest in these types of things in the future. But each of them just allows for an escape, but also the challenge, the engagement, the fun-loving interaction with friends and family, which just creates special moments. And I think with that, I'm going to call it. So if you managed to get through this was a little bit less structured, I suppose, a little bit all over the place. Basic topic in mind, but again, no script, no editing. I think there'll be one cut in the center, just when I decided to go this route. But otherwise, that's it. I hope you have an absolutely spectacular one, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Have a great one, and goodbye.